Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning. Welcome back, Kaylan. It's good. Yeah, Daf Ches. Okay. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Peah, Pedek Aleph, Halacha Aleph. We are learning today Daf Ches. We're going to start 3 lines from the top of the Amid. And as we already opened up the sugya, when we finished yesterday's shir, the Mishnah, not the Braisa, just the Mishnah, Elu Dvarim, Sha'adam Oichel, the Nusach in our Mishnah is Mi Peiroi Seyem, V'oilam Haza. V'hakeren Kayemes Loi, L'oilam Haba. Guys, let's halt up. Shmuli, you have Kibud Aba Aim, Gemilos Chasadim, Hava Asholoim, Shebein Adam Lechaveroi, the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. That's the Mishnah. Says the Gemara that there is a Braisa that has the opposite side of the coin. And there always has to be what we call the Zelu Umazeh, that there are 4 Averos from all of the 365 Averos, that we have the same concept that they are so severe that even though there is retribution, even in Olam Hazeh, but the retribution, so to say, only resolves the paytas of the Aveda, and the whole Keden, God forbid, Kayemis Leila Olam Haba, that Rambam actually in Hilchas Deya says, Ein lohem chelek la'olam haba, because normally, but at least it gives him the kapara. So then they'll be zoicha la'olam haba. And the Vedas, for which God forbid a person loses their chelek la'olam haba, so that's their punishment. They don't get punished by Olam Hazeh. These Avedas, not only do they get punished by Olam Hazeh, but Ein Lahem Chelek Olam Haba. But that's the nusach of the Rambam. Maybe he had a different girsa in the Gemara. Our Gemara's girsa will be exactly the way we have it in the Mishnah. That the retribution mipeder seyim lo'olam hazeh v'hakeren kayemes lo'olam hazeh lo'olam haba, and the 4 avedas, guys, is avodah zara, gilui aroyos, shvichas damim. Right, these are the 3 avedas for which a person has to be meiser nefesh kipshutay, and v'lashon hara keneged kulam. One is the opposite of the other one, the 4 of the Mishnah and the 4 of the Braisa. But since for Lashon Hara Keneged Kulam, we're going to have a daf today all about Lashon Hara. Now in Bavli, you have this in Erechin and in other places, but here in Yerushalmi, so far, I mean, right at the beginning, is a generic word that includes in it all types we say like Rachel. The word Rachel actually means a peddler. A peddler means that I'm not beginning the story, but someone already spoke about Reuven. I heard about it. When I go to Chaim Yankel, you know what this guy said about that guy, you know what this person said about the. I'm just passing gossip. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's something negative. I talk about people. God forbid. That's called rechilus. Lashon Hara is actually when I relate something negative about someone. That's the technical Lashon Hara. Then you have even worse, Moitzi Shemra. I'm speaking about someone, and it's Bechlal not true. Included, you should know, in words, Lashon, that's not good, that's bad, let's touch it the way it is also Oino as Devarim. Oino as Devarim means I'm not speaking about you, I'm speaking to you, but I'm speaking you in a way that my words are hurtful to you. I'm doing something b'dibur that's aggressive to you. All of that is included in the lashon hara, and it's amazing how we're not saying when we say that when Chazal say that for lashon hara keneged kulam, they're not saying that a person has to be moiser nefesh. You have to also understand the context. We're not learning Shulchan Aruch, we're learning Chazal, we're learning Gemaras, and in Gemara you have different types of Torah Shebal Peh. On some level, yes, lashon hara is worse than all three. As we'll learn today, as God willing, the sugya will even continue tomorrow. We're going to learn about avak, lashon hara, the dust of lashon hara. We're going to speak about hinting, not even saying words, but making a remez through which this is included, mamish, in the isur of lashon hara. We're going to find sources in the Torah, in the Yerushalmi, the whole time, my tama. And not only is it a violation of a positive commandment, we'll see it's a violation of a negative commandment. There is a machlokes tanoim, which negative commandment, and we'll have a lot of positive. We're going to learn in our Gemara how much Hashem protects people, even if they are the biggest sinners, if they are cautious, if they hold themselves back from speaking lashon hara. And without any further ado, Chevra, let's go Daf Ches Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amid. Ukenegdon kibud avaim gmilos chasadim v'hava shalom shebein adam lachaveroi. The Talmud Torah says the Braisa that God takes retribution from the sinner in this world. Normally, retribution brings about atonement, but there is no atonement. There's no even partial atonement. The whole sin, and like we mentioned, the Rambam quoting this Chazal uses and what are the 4? So we have Elohein Avodah Zarah. Now I'm going to jump right away. Keep your finger in the Gemara and go down to the Rashi Ilio. There are different opinions, but we're going to learn around 6 lines from the bottom when he brings his own opinion. It's in the right column of the Rashi Ilio, 6 lines before the bottom. V'nirali, the Kibbud Avayim is the opposite of Avodah Zarah. Makes sense. Why is that? Because the Einoi Makir Ovev Shabayrai. A person who's Kibbud Avayim is to acknowledge the Father. What's unique about the Father? We learned this yesterday. It's not just you're being Poirei Achoiv. Shloisha Shutfim Ba'adam. In other words, the Father and the Mother created you. Kipshutai. So denying that covet is denying God. God is our creator. So that's the opposite. That's his opinion. Avodah Zarah is the opposite, is the negative. And here again, when people ask the question that Hashem did not give us the 10 dibros on 1 tablet or on 2 tablets, and we have the general rule, the first 5 is Benadam Lamakim, second 5 is Benadam Lachaveroi, and the question is, how does that fit with the fact that the fifth of the first tablet is Kibbud Avayim? So the answer is Kibbud Avayim isn't just a Benadam Lachaveroi. The Benadam Lachaveroi maybe is what God gave to the Bnei Noach, but beyond the reason, the type of kibbud avayim that Rab Tarfon did, and they told him that you didn't even do 1,000,000th what you needed to do, or 1,000,000 times more, elef alafim would not even be half, or whatever the lashon exactly there was. The lashon exact is important. That's a ben adam lamakim. The next one is Gilui Aroyos. So Gilui Aroyos, what's the opposite of Gilui Aroyos? So the Rashi Ilya writes is Gemilos Chasadim, because there is nothing crueler. Want to do cruel? Than Gilui Aroyos, the betrayal, and more than that, a person has to steal many times. You end up with the type of violation of the person's own conscience. When they commit Gilui Aroyos, they're going to end up stealing. He writes for the Zoyna. They're going to hurt other people. The act itself is the worst act of cruelty. That's why the opposite of Gilui Aroyos is to be Goimel Chesed. All right. The third here is Shvichas Damim. So he writes now the Shvichas Damim, the Rashi Ilya, I'm going a little bit out of the order because he did bring other opinions and he doesn't argue with the first opinion. So it's 7 lines before the bottom of the other. He says Shvichas Damim is the opposite of Haba Shalom. Right? You bring peace between people. And what's the opposite of that? Murder. So you see, we're speaking about the Ruchniistic thing. right? Because Begashmi is, as long as you're living, you're living. So on this Ruchnistic level concludes the Braisa, the Lashon, Hara, Keneged Kulam, which is exactly the Lashon of our Mishnah, the Talmud Torah, Keneged Kulam. And now what's the correlation between the opposites, Lashon Hara and Talmud Torah? L'chu'ura, and that's something, let's speak out based on Pi Chasidus, that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is bedibur, v'dibarta. You know, many of us, when we marry to have a son, and our minig is that by Vachnach, which is the night before the bris, we learn specific parts of the Zajac, and you know the whole story over there and how people were gathered in that inn, and everyone was saying a Torah about the bris. And one of the Torahs that are recorded that we say is that when the bris happens, and there's already the explanation in the Zajac, the whole story of Eliyahu Hanavi, that Eliyahu Hanavi has to come. And he has to see how we're keeping God's covenant, and he has to go back to the Eibishter by saying that the Yidden are keeping the covenant. We have to say that Zeh Kisei Shel Eliyahu Hanavi, Dakur Sayed Eliyahu Hanavi. And it says in the Zajac that if you don't say those words, Eliyahu Hanavi cannot remain. In other words, speech is the medium between Gashmias and Ruchnis. So we are physical people also. We're here in a physical place. Eliyahu Hanavi doesn't have a body yet. By the way, Eliyahu Navi could come in a body. That's another whole topic. That's some Sefer. But he comes many times on a Shama, Bloiguf. How do you connect? The connection between tangible and Ruchnias is speech. It's a medium. So you want to hold Eliyahu Navi here, you have to say words. Ultimately, the ultimate is God. God is not tangible. I want to bring him here. So yeah, we have in Chassidus the whole idea that the mitzvahs are kalim. We just mentioned this yesterday. Torah is oir. But even to hold on to the oir, you need to have words. Words keep the light of godliness that's in the Torah and mamish Hashem and no nafshik savas yavis here in this world. So words bring into the world the greatest of the oir, God Himself, and the evil of hara. How do you keep it? God forbid in this world. Not you said it and it went away. Words. So it's the great, you're bringing into the world the greatest Kedusha with words, and you're bringing evil into the world, the Ra, through your Dibur. So you can say every action is worse. Yes and no. An action is so megushimdik that it doesn't have in its ruchnius. Speech brings something very ruchnius in it, and it keeps it here. It's an in-between. And in between is connected to the highest of one side and to the lowest of the other side. So using speech for Ra, that's the opposite of using your speech for the words of Torah. And now the Gemara wants to know Avodah Zarah Minai. Now, first we have to find sources that maybe you get punished. Max, like the Rambam says, Elam Chelik, or you get punished on Elam Hazah. How do you know you get punished? So the source is really from Avodah Zarah. And then we'll see from Avodah Zarah, we learn to everything else. Avodah Zarah minayin, a pasuk in Shalach regarding Avodah Zarah. The Torah says, he kodis, hanefesh. The person, he kodis, you know, all these double expressions, especially al pi Chasidus, we don't accept that Dibra Torah Koloshen Bnei Adam, that's only pshat. But the Gemara is not focusing on he kodis. It's not that. He kodis means cut off. You will certainly be cut off. And even after Kaddish, it says Avoino Ba. The sin is still in it. Now, the word Avoino Ba is extra, right? We're not focusing on the double. Matamalem and Avoino Ba. And Melame, no. Shahanefesh Nichreses, that even though the person is cut off, and Kaddish means Alpi Pshat, that the person doesn't live beyond 50. In other words, they don't live in this world. They're cut off this world. So you would think they're punished. They die young. It brings kapara, misa mechaperes, not for Avodah Zarah. Even though they were cut off, the whole sin is still in them. So that is a pasuk in Shalach for Avodah Zarah. Now, what about the other three? So we make a gzeda shav that in Avodah Zarah elsewhere the Torah uses the words a great sin, not a sin, a great sin, and we'll see all of these four have the word gedolah written in one way or the other connected to it. So let's go. By Avodah Zarah, Parshas Kisisa, it says on the so you see the word gedolah. And we see already from the pasuk in Shalach that for a sin that's gedoyla, not only he kares tikares, but the whole sin remains. We find by Gilui Aroyos in Parshas Vayeshev, that was Gilui Aroyos. She was a married woman, and she was trying to seduce Yosef Atzadik. And what does he tell her? Ve'ech ese, not hora, hora hagdoila hazois v'chatasi laloikim. Gedoila. That means Gilui Aroyos is gedoila, like Avodah Zarah, here and there. Shvichas damim. It's amazing. We're going to Psukim before the Matan Torah. Parshas Bereshis. Ein Lamedim Koydem Matan Torah doesn't go for these types of ruchnias dikenyanim. It goes for halacha. We're speaking about something ruchnias. Vayomer Kayin El Hashem Godoil Avoini Minasai. Is my sin so great for you to bear? But Godoil, Baiter Godol. And now the Gemara says, Kishu Ba Eitz Lashon Hara Mahu Aimer. Even worse, Keneged Kulam, not Godol, not Gedoila, not Hagdoila, El Gedoilois. Because it's equivalent to everything else. Where do we have the word gedolos? Tehillah, Yachris Hashem, called sifsei chalokos, smooth tongues, loshoin midaberes, gedolos, and that's speaking about evil speech. So there we go, beautiful. Keneged kulam, because of the gedolos. Okay, says the Gemara. Now that we spoke about the unique type of violation of Lashon Hara, Ksiv, just to say as a proud Lubavitcher Chassid that how great that they make a big to do about it. That's a beautiful thing, and we should learn from that. Okay, Ksiv, it says Parshas Vayeshev, Vayove Yosef as the Basam Ra El Aviyam, Parshas Vayeshev. Okay, so Mahu Amr. First of all, what was the Dibasam Ra'ah? And this is a difficult sugya, but let's go. So we have three opinions. Machlokes Tanoim noch, Rab Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rab Shimon. Rab Meir, Omer, what did he tell their father? Hashudim hein al Ever Menachai. Wow. You know that, I think it was the Maggid Mishnah, he wrote a whole sefer, analyzing whether the Bnei Yisrael, whether the descendants of Yaakov Avinu, before Matan Torah had a din of a Jew or a din of a Ben Noach. One of the nafkaminas would be, just as an example, let's speak about this topic over here, that when you shecht an animal and the animal is still jerking, mefarkes, for a yid, you're allowed to eat it. It's a mitzvah of shchita. The animal is geshacht. For a goy can eat an avela. A goy doesn't eat shchita. A goy is not allowed to eat Ever Menachai. If the animal is still jerking around, then it's called Ever Menachai. So, just explaining, so they felt, so one way of understanding this, how was he even choshed them that they ate Ever Menachai? It was based on something that he saw, and he had a wrong understanding. But what he saw was l'chayda. That's one approach that is famous. I forgot who originated the idea that the brothers shechted an animal and they ate it right away and was still jerking around because they considered themselves to have a din of a ben Yisrael, halachically of a ben Yisrael. Yosef Atzadik felt that since we don't know, you have to be machmir. You have to do the chumras of both. So he said that chashudim al Ever Menachai. And by the way, he didn't tell his parents that they violate this. They're chashud. He was sharing information, but that's not okay, because if you witness something and if you can be done it, if you can look at it with a certain angle, which would make this action to be completely okay, then there's nothing to share. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, that what he told the parents was that they are mizalzel l'lehein b'bnei hashvachas. In other words, when it came to Dan Naftali, right, and God and Asher, that they did not speak to them the same way. And it was okay that they did not speak to them the same way, because there is a difference between the Mois and the Shvachos, not to the derogatory way that he thought. But so what they were doing was okay. But since he was not machabed them the same way, he reshared that to the father. And Rab Shimon, the Tana, that's the Rashbi Omer, that he told the father that noisten heimenem b'bnei saaretz, that they're looking on the local girls. Now, that, just to understand what happened, is that they did business. They were shepherds, and they interacted a lot with the local, who are their clients, B'nai Sa'aretz. And how do you look at that? You can look at it, they're doing business. You can look at it, all your customers are B'nai Sa'aretz. That's a phenomenal question. That's a phenomenal question. And you see, for you learn chitas. So Kaidim called there two approaches. One approach is that every one of the 12 was born with a twin. Mamash was born, and they married their twin sisters. That's very difficult. Yeah, how can they marry sisters? We do see that Avram Avinu, how careful he was for Yitzchak not to marry Bibnois Canaan, and they lived either over there with Lavan Harami. He's a not good guy. Well, over there at least it was better, but they moved. And when they moved, they were living in Eretz Yisrael. That is Megurei Yavet. So Anachanami, you see, Chazal say they married Bibnois Canaan, but the issue wasn't that they married Bibnois Canaan, who they converted, meaning they accepted one God, is that after they were married, their business interactions, I know in Brazil, what can I tell you? It's on Zoom, unrecorded, whatever certain begodim that women wear, intimate begodim, are manufactured by Hasidic Shayid. They have the lycra machines, and like it doesn't fit, but that's the parnusa. And some of these people are tzaddikim gemurim. And when you go into the offices, you see begodim that don't belong in a Hasidic office. They don't look at it that way. I think that's what it was. That was their business. That's their product. And it can be, if you're not in that world of parnasa with all the headaches, it made them nauseous. You understand? It gave them, that was their tzaddis. Okay, Daniel Hassan is laughing because it's azoy, it's mamish like that. And then in Brazil, there's carnaval, and then every time they make the beauty of that business, they used to say is that it's knit. So if you make bigger, if it's less tsunua, you use less yarn. And they celebrate. Said, Baruch Hashem, this year, for the same money, you invest less. There's greater profit. You understand? And they're not looking at it that it's less modest. That's not oila latateh mamish. Okay. Anyways, back over here. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Paz. And let's go like this. That it says a pasuk in Mishlei. Peles, we have to go quicker, but it's so beautiful. This Peles umoizne mishpat lashem. A scale or a balance, a real balance that belongs to God. Means God is exact. Mida keneged mida. Umaseyu kol avnekis. God's deeds are like weights. You know, when you use a weight, after many years, it can get rubbed out a little bit. People that are so careful that everything should be perfect, they put their weights in a pouch. So when you put it on and off the scale, it shouldn't even get rubbed off a millimeter, a nanometer. That's God's. Means the concept that when you see mida keneged mida, you see the hand of God. That mahu amar, and that's regarding all of the three tanoim. One opinion was shouldn't hein aleivim menachai. So amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu kach ani machiach aleim. He's gonna see that they shecht and they eat. How great is that? You know, he needed to witness that. And the way that Asher your words on the left side column is that if not for Yosef HaTzadik's sharing information that did shed a doubt on the observance of his brothers, at that point, God would have intervened. God would have protected him. When they had this conspiracy to shecht and then to dip it and to trick the father, terrible story. God did not intervene because they did it through shechting. And he needed to see that they shecht. And he was claiming, but that was not accurate. But it gave that appearance. So what happened? Le'eved nimka Yosef. I think Le'eved nimka Yosef, if you read inside the Chumash writes right away that he rose to the top. Was Yosef an Eved in his house? No. Yes and no. Because he was an Eved, but he became the chief administrator. And it was beautiful. I mean, he had a lot of power there. So that's not the way you think about an Eved. He was not the Eved. It was terrible, but it wasn't terrible. That was the mistake. You know, he needed to witness that you can be an Eved and you cannot be an Eved. So there was something about them being only B'nai Hashvachos, and how whatever that meant, I don't know, was not a derogatory because they were good. Ma Omar, what was the third thing? That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai noised in the name of Bnei Sa'aretz. He made that claim. You're making such a claim? Haduba Mizgari Yaloch. The beer is the wife of Potifera, will attack you. As it says, Vatisa Eshes Adoine Vesinea Al Yosef, and she said, Shich Ve'imi. So there was a suspect. There was something that he saw that he misunderstood. There was an interaction Yosef had with her that an observer could have also misunderstood. She herself misunderstood, maybe. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yasa b'shem Rabbi Yechon, that Zeshu Oimer Lashon Hara, Einoi Oimer won't be able to say it. Look at these serious words. Chuhu Koifer Be'eket. Now we did say Keneged Kulam, including Avodah Zarah. So there is an aspect of it. Where do we find that somehow you are denying the Iker? The Iker is that there's a creator, Matama, Pasuk and Tehillim, Asher Omru. Those who have said a little Shanenu Nagber Sifosenu, because of our tongue, some people who have a good mouth, they conquer the world with it. Because of our tongue, we're going to prevail over everything. And Mi Adon who is a master over us? Dvar Melech Shiltain. It's the word is that ultimate power is speech. You know why? Because God creates with speech. So this whole word that to use the tools of creation. And taka miyadin lanu, because you dvar melech shiltai. Using that for bad is a denial of kafar be'ik. God creates with speech, and you're using that same speech to do the opposite. Kol averos adam chayte ba'aretz. We're talking about tangible sins. Physical has the biggest effect on physical. The elu, but sins of lashon hara, like we mentioned, it's a medium. This word, it's both. Is bashamayim u'ba'aretz, and where do we have a source for that? Maitamo. Another pasuk in Tehillim. Shatu bashamayim piyam. U'lashonim tehalach ba'aretz. Like we mentioned, that's what speech does. Speech is connected everywhere. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, it says in Tehillim, Binu, no, Zois, please understand this. Shechecha Eloka, you who are forgotten God, Pen Etroif, Ve'ein Matzel. If you forget for God, you'll be devoured and no one is going to save you. What does that refer to? Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that this whole pasuk, now guys, if you open up at Tehillim, you'll see the gewaldigkeit of this Gemara. We're learning Tehillim Kapitel Nun. If you open up a Tehillim, the pasuk that the Gemara quoted, Rabbi Yitzchak began with pasuk Chav Beis. So, remember this, those who forgot God, that you're going to be, God forbid, etroif, and no one will save you. What sins is he referring to? The forgetting of God. So when you want to understand what the pasuk is referring to, you have to see context. So when you go back to psukim, that means the pasuk Chav, it says, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, what's the Shechecha Elokah? Where it says, Teisha be'ochicha, tidaber, that you sit down and you speak, be'ochicha means against your brother, be'benincha, titandoifi, and you slander your mother's son. So that is the sin so pasuk chav beis, how did you forget God? Slander, pasuk chav. Problem is, if you go back to psukim, in pasuk yud ches, it says, imre isa ganov, batiratz imoy. We're speaking about the sin of theft, the sin of Gilei Aroyos. So how do you know that the pasuk Chav Beis is only going back to Lashon Hara? Maybe it's going back to theft. Maybe that's a Sheikh Chalak, maybe. So the answer is go back another two psukim. You're going backwards. Maksiv Tamon, now pasuk Tezayin, Vilarasha Amar Eloki, Cholasaper Chuki, Chukoi, Batisa Brisi Alei Picha. Batisa Brisi Alei Picha is a sin of the lips. So that clarifies that what is the pasuk referring to? Dafke, not to all of the sins mentioned in the capital, but to the one that's mentioned, Dafke Lashon Hara. Okay. And that's called you forget God, forgetting God. Okay, you can argue every sin is that way, but that's the way we're learning that it's a sin of speech. The greatest violation. You're using the tool that God uses to create, you're using that for bad. What's the source that one cannot say Lashon Hara? Now, I want you to know that on Parshas Kiseitze, I'm sorry, when we, the Alter Rebbe put it in the Siddur, every day we say the Sheish Zechiros. So we say Zocher, Eis, Asher, Asa Shem Alikecha Miriam Baderech B'Tzeischem Mimitzrayim. Look inside Rashi in Chitas. The pshat of that is, remember, that's the positive commandment not to speak lashon hara. Well, it's Miriam spoke lashon hara against Moshe Rabbeinu, and she was made into a mitzoras for 7 days, and we waited for her. So that's the pshat of Rashi. So that's the positive source. Remember, in other words, Zachac is a mitzvah say. Where do we have in the Torah explicitly not to speak lashon hara? So we have a machlokes, which is amazing. One, the first answer is same Parshas Kiseitze, where it says, actually, it says Kiseitze machana aloivecha v'nishmarta mikol davara. So teaches the Gemara v'nishmarta mikol davara davar dibur. Hishamer pen and al is a lav. Guard yourself lest, not from a bad thing, but don't speak bad words. One source. Amar Rab law, and we already said, I think it was at the end of Brachas, that just like it's common that in the Yerushalmi you're missing an aleph, they skipped it. They skipped an ayin. So Elah, we're familiar with. Law, like what's law? Law's no, his name was Elah, but they called him Amar Reb Law. Turn of the Rabbi Shmuel in Parshas Kedoshim. Loiselech Rachel ba'mecha. And Rachel, don't be a peddler. We're a peddler. You're kidding? The Kipshute, how many Jews lived off being peddlers in the Eastern Europe? Rachel means you're peddling. This what this one said about the other. What Zurachilus lashon hara. It's different. Zurachilus or lashon hara. In other words, what we're making clear is that rechilus could be interpreted as a specific, as we spoke in the intro, but it could be the generic lashon hara, as is lashon hara. Tana Rebbe Nechemia. What does it even mean to be a rachel? A rachel means a peddler. Yeah. Don't use your words the way a peddler uses his merchandise, which is matin devarav shozel zeh udevarav shozel zeh. Tell you something more, that what a peddler does. See, if I sell tires, that's what I sell. What does a peddler sell? Everything. Not only that, when he goes to a place to sell, if that person has something to sell to him, he becomes a buyer. Because a peddler is bringing stuff from here to here. Daf ches amid base. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Chanina. Boy yurei. Kama kasha. How harsh, how severe is even only avak lashon hara? Look inside the top Mara folder. What's the dust of lashon hara? Afilu einay lashon hara gemura. Ella avak lashon hara. In other words, words that aren't even evil, but words that might bring an agmas nefesh to someone. You know how serious it is that God Almighty in the Torah wrote words that are not on some level true. They are divrei badoi. Badoi means words of lying. God wrote that. Where do we find it? Let's go. When Sodom heard that she's going to get pregnant and have a child, the Torah says, "Vatitzchak Sodom b'kirba leimor," and this is what she said. That after I withered, no, well, I have delicate skin. Because that woman care very much about the skin. It's a good business, guys. And it's amazing that no matter how many creams they don't work, you'll still get them to buy it because this one is gonna work. And then she said, no, I am old. And then she says that my husband is old. By the way, Avram Avinu was 100 years old. Lav Dafka, he would have gotten upset. Sometimes I'm old is used as the best blessing in the world. What do you want from me? I'm old. Lamachap. Sometimes when you hear that, you get insulted. Now, what did it's amazing. God changed the words of Sodom. Ulavram, Elo, what did Hashem tell Avram? Is it even possible? Is it emes? Is it umnan that I'm going to give birth when vani zokanti? Vani meaning me Sarah, but vadoni zokin. But that she also said that my husband is old. Ain't sivkan. No, God told him that she says I am old. Actually, she never said I am old. All she said was I have a few wrinkles. I'm not old. He's old. God changed that. Why? That's the pshat of lashon hara. The point is that she didn't say something bad. Not only was it the emes, it's not bad. There's no America yet. Old is old. Could be the source of Minag America. Ooh, the avodah of youth. Old, you insulted me. So not to create. Also, when couples are young, they're married for all these years. They already had their shalom bayis established. They already have good roots. What damage would it have done? That's called avaklo. That God was mishana. Now there's many levels to this, but we'll leave it at that.
All right, didn't we learn that you're considered old when you admit you're old?
Well, Kevan said a gewaldige word that we have in the Rambam, the way that Rambam paskins. This we learned in the Masechtas Nida about you have to know what a zakena means. What's the definition of an old? Either in the context of a Nida, old woman. It's not a biological old. It's the Rambam says when you call a woman old and she doesn't get insulted, that means she's old. But that's by a woman. He doesn't say that by a man. That's why, that's the whole word, that if old for a man would have been an insult, then it's not called avak lashon hara. The whole point is that sometimes old for a man is a compliment. Let's convince ourselves now with the white beard, that's a compliment. Sometimes it might not be. Okay, weiter. That boy re'eh. Now look in kama gadol hashalom. In the positive, there were different two gersois. Shedibru haksuvim divrei havoi. Kedei lohatel shalom ben Yosef le'echav. Chado d'chsiv vayitzavu es Yosef le'moir. In other words, we have two psukim. If you want to look in the Torah or Shalom, I'm just going to read it from there, and then we'll read it back in the Gemara. Vayitzavu es Yosef le'moir. Pashas vayichi avicha tziva lefnei Moiseh le'moir. They told Yosef that this is Avicha, your father, our father, your father commanded that Kois Hamru Yosef Ana Sa Na Pesha Achecha V'Chatosam Ki Ra'a Gimalucha V'Ata Sa Na La Pesha Avdei Yalekei Avicha and Vayef Yosef V'Davram Elav. Did Yaakov Avinu ever say these words? Never said those words. Although the Ksiv Vayitzavu El Yosef Leimer Avicha Tziva Lefnei Moshe Leimer Kois Hamru Yosef Ana Sa Na. Now, V'Loi Ashkechan the Pakat Klum. We don't find that he gave that commandment. When the Gemara says that, not everything that Yaakov said is recorded. Chazal is telling us Yaakov never gave that commandment. The brothers are teaching us something, and the Torah's recording of it, without somehow being merames that they did wrong, is telling us that that's right. That to bring shalom ben ish la'achiv, mamish brotherhood, you can be mishana from the emes. And actually, to be faithful to the words of the Gemara, you can speak divrei badoi. Being meshana means you can't lie. Yeah, no, divrei badoi means, like you said, lying. You can say words of not truth to bring shalom. Okay, beautiful. Says the Gemara, Rab Shmuel ben Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yonasan. Muter loimer lashon hara al bali amachloikes. In other words, the whole problem of lashon hara, from the many problems, is that it brings division. If someone is bringing division, and the only way to take that evil force out is by speaking negatively about them, then you could do that. Al derech mashal, let's speak about it. It's keneged kulam. Murder is murder. But when it comes to protecting me or protecting someone who's a roidev, if I need to, I can kill the roidev. I shvichas damim. So it's not that never ever period. No, that if you're taking out a bala machlekes, then if the only way of doing it is by speaking lashon hara, then you should do it. Was trying to make himself to be the king, wear it, and to right away counter them. So what happened is that the Nasan Hanavi tells Bathsheba, you tell the king what's happening. That Adoniyahu was already coronating himself. And then he told Bathsheba, as you're sharing this information with David, with the king, I'm going to come in after you. Umilesi as the Varoich. Umilesi means I'm going to elaborate. Not that I'm going to come after you and I'm going to confirm what you said. I'm going to elaborate. Why do you need to elaborate? Because the machloikis that would have been caused, God forbid, had Adoniyahu been king, and Shlomo HaMelech would have been king, it would have been a split, which happened in the next generation. It was so bad, it needed to be put to an end. And therefore speaking negatively about what Adoniyahu was doing was so important that he didn't only repeat it, he elaborated. Oh, says the Gemara, another thing. So what happened, just another detail, is that after David HaMelech passed away, and Shlomo HaMelech was already the king, when David HaMelech was very old, so they gave him a personal maidservant, this Chagis, Ben Shulamis. I'm sorry, Avishag Ben Shulamis. Thank you. Yeah, Ben Shulamis. That was the Haftorah. And or Danny knows the whole Nach, or that was his Bar Mitzvah Parsha, or one of his kids, his father. Okay, so what happened there is that after David passed away, Adoniyahu asked Shlomo for permission to marry her. Marry Avishag Hashunamis. And then Shlomo HaMelech went out and killed him. So the Gemara says, why do you think he killed Adoniyahu? Simply because he asked to marry Avishag Hashunamis? No. He killed him because Adoniyahu made a machlokes b'Chaya's father by trying to become a king. Amalei ilo hoyim b'vakshim. He was looking for an ilah. He was looking for an excuse. Lahatir domam shel bali hamachlokes. That was the right timing. But he was already deserving of death. Why? Because of the machlokes. And therefore, to root out the machlokes, you can even use lashon hara. You can kill him. You can speak lashon hara against him because lashon hara is murder. Keneged kulam. It's murder. It's gilai rois. It's everything. Bo kamin Rabbi Yechon. What's lashon hara? We say lashon. We keep on saying lashon means speech. The whole thing. Rabba, bara, bedabra. So that's our approach. So you would think that the big severity is only speech. So says Rabbi Yechanan that not only, whether he answered or whether it was answered in front of him, not only speaking it, but also says the Marafulda, even if you're only hinting something negative, that's also included in the great violation. As the story Gemara says, Chanusa the Kitanoi Havaloin Sumois, flax dealers, they experience sumais. Sumais means, we just spoke about this yesterday, that the government, or 2 days ago, they would tax people. Thank God in America, they don't learn Gemara, the government here. Here, they tax you, everything is taxed. Aside of all the money tax, is that whenever they needed, if the government needed to make flax, why would they pay workers? They would go to the flax market, and they would go into that area, and they would take people. Today, you have to work for the government for free. That was the person that was Machaba the father by him being the grinder. In other words, everyone has to volunteer. So when everyone was being farchap to work for the government, there was a person over there. His name was Bar Choyvetz, and he managed to hide below Salak, and they were not happy with it. So they told the government, what should we eat today? What are you guys serving us? So one guy says, I'll suggest to serve chuftzin. Now, chuftzin is an unusual word for cheese, but chuftzin is the same word of this guy who hid from the government. So when they said chuftzin, the guy chapped, I knew there was someone else missing. So Amar, Yesi Bar Choyvetz. So they were merames that this guy got off the hook, and they went and they got him. And even though they didn't say that this guy Bar Choyvetz hid, but they alluded, they were Oiber Chachamim, Unter Chachamim. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Ze Amar Lashon Hara Bahatzna. That's called speaking Lashon Hara Bahatzna. They were hiding it, but that's also Lashon Hara. That's the Yoidin. Another story. Bulefte. Now, Bulefte, the Pnei Moshe says, is a Chaburas Anoshim Chashuvim. And let's say in the art school he teaches counselors. I mean, it's people who lawyers, a group of lawyers. Right. And the same thing, the government needed lawyers, so he went there and he drafted Tzumos. And there were and this guy Yochanan somehow managed to, he hid, but they were not happy with it. Amar Chad L'Chad, Beis Anan Misalkin Mevachen Rabbi Yochanan Yom Adain. Oh, Rabbi Yochanan was not feeling well. We didn't visit Rabbi Yochanan. They mentioned the word Yochanan, and they were not hiding it by a mitzvah. Even worse. Amar Yochanan, the lawyer is missing. Yesi Yochanan. Amar Shemen Lakish. Ze Amar Lashon Hara B'Tzedek, which is even tzedek means that they hid the lashon hara by making believe they want to do a mitzvah of bikar chaylim. There's a hatzna and a tzedek. We state in the hayom yom. You can have a nefesh habahamis or a yetzer hara that's dressed with the Hasidic beketche. Okay. And who knows? Only God knows. God knows what their intention was. And Rabbi Yechanan was taka sick. And if one guy would have said, we have to visit Rabbi Yechanan, if he would have meant well, it would have been a mitzvah. God knew that they didn't mean it. That you should know, let's finish with this. That David, Kulam Sadikim Hoyer. People were a lot more righteous. Nevertheless, there was one area in which they were weak, which was they were amongst them people that spoke Lashon Hara. That's why and during wars there were casualties. And who should David Amar? That nafshi b'soich levoyim, that my soul is amongst lions in a positive way. He found himself to be amongst giants. I lie with people who are on fire. Who does that refer to? Nafshi b'soich levoyim. There goes an Abner and Amasa, that they were lions in the Torah. Who does that refer to? Doigen achi toifel. That watch. And in other words, Doig and Achitoifel, as we learned, right, they could have prevented the whole murder over there in Noiv Irakayana. And people whose teeth are spears and arrows. That refers to the people of the city of Keilah. David HaMelech saved that whole city from the Pelishtim. He saved them. And yet, they were going to go and inform Shaul that he's there. As it says, Hayasgiruni Bale Keilah Biyadoi. Will the leaders deliver me? Hayated, and if they'll deliver me, Shaul will come and get me. And what did he refer to? That the people whose tongues are Cherev Chada, that goes to the people of the Zifim, as it says, B'voy Hazifim v'yemru l'Shol. In other words, we're just proving that in the times of David HaMelech, even though on one hand there were people that were lions in Torah, there were a lot of people that spoke Lashon Hara. And David told Hashem, Mashkinasach lated Baretz, your Shechina will come down in this world, Salak Shechinasach mi b'neim, because of the Lashon Hara. Hado d'chsiv, Ruma al Hashemayim Elokim, al kol ha'aretz kivodecha. In other words, al kol ha'aretz kivodecha, al means he told Hashem, not you, your glory should be in the world, it should be above the world. So David HaMelech himself was moided that because of the Bali Lashon Hara, the Shekhinah cannot fully come down, and that resulted that when he went to war, there were casualties. The wicked Achav. How wicked? The worst. They were over the Avodah Zarah, but they had a big quality that no one there spoke Lashon Hara about. When they went out to war, they were not Zajac. And what's the proof that they don't speak Lashon Hara? That the Achav killed crazy amounts of Nevi'im. Numbers then, Oivadya hid 100. And the fact that no one told Achav was because people did not speak Lashon Hara. Zevel, his wife, killed all the Nevi Hashem. And even though that he killed them, he made a comment once that I give them both bread and water. Who is he talking about? That means he was being Meramas to Eliyahu that he has a lot of people that he's hiding. And he gave them bread and water. Now, bread and water is nothing. I gave them bread. So even during a time of drought, where water was as precious as bread, he supported them. In other words, you don't give it. Maim is insignificant. No, malamid. This is just a parenthesis. Because of the drought, as we know, nevertheless, that Eliyahu Machnas B'Reish Carmel, Eliyahu Navi didn't even know. No one knew that Ovadia hit 100. He said, "Vanino Sarti Navi Lashem Levadi." You know how many people must have known that Ovadia was hiding 100 Nevi'im? Many, many people. Nevertheless, which was, thank God, that means Achav never found out, which is why they survived. So even though they were sinners, the schus of Lashon Hara, the Keneged Kulam is such that it offered them tremendous protection. God willing, to be continued.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And we're really